What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, NVDA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the overall market this far, what's going on with other factors involving the markets in terms of economic data and other things like that. What you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I begin to have all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to mention that I was trying to use Webull for this video, and I was having a little issue with the software. So I'm going to be using TradingView for the entire video. I'll be talking about Palantir, Meta, and all the other tickers like I normally do, but I'm just going to be using TradingView instead and try something very different. So first, let's talk about some data before we break down the charts. In terms of data, I just want to mention that tomorrow is Friday, March 22nd at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a couple of hours after the market opens. We have Barr giving a speech from the Fed. Then at 4 p.m., we have Bostic giving a speech. So they could say some things that affect the market. So I don't think it's going to be that crazy. Now, for today, we basically just had Nike and FedEx announce their earnings. Nike did not do the best. The shares have dropped because of lackluster outlooks from the company. Their guidance was not the best, but their slowing Chinese sales got the best of them. That's despite the fact that they beat on EPS and revenue. EPS was a beat with 77 cents as expected, and revenue was also a slight beat. But their net income was not the best. Their outlook was not as great, and their sales in China are declining again. So the share price is still down despite that. That's not the best of news so far. On top of this, there's also FedEx, which announced its earnings, and this thing is up pretty big. They had some good earnings, which is great news for them. So what happened was they beat on EPS with $3.86 per share, beating expectations of $3.46. Revenue was at about 21.7 billion, just a little bit below expectations, but they announced a $5 billion a share buyback. On top of that, they also had some good guidance. So they had good earnings overall. Guidance is what helps this a lot, especially the $5 billion buyback. Excuse me. And that's why the share price is up the way it is. Besides that, there was some big news that came out. This is what caused the market, especially Apple, to sell off. The Justice Department announced that's going to be suing Apple for antitrust violations as soon as Thursday. The US is accusing Apple, the world's second most valuable tech company, of violating antitrust laws by blocking rivals from accessing hardware and software features of its iPhone, amongst other breaches. This is important news, and with this coming out, there's actually, a lot of accusations that the iPhone is just maintaining its dominance in ways that are not necessarily legal. But if you want more details, you could contact someone that's actually a legal expert. I'm just reading this off reports and such. But I just want to say that this is coming out as they're getting a lot of scrutiny in Europe for their alleged anti-competitive behavior. So that's not the best of news for Apple. That's why Apple ended up selling off, and this did end up affecting the market just a little bit. There's also news coming out that the Fear and Greed Index is currently at extreme greed. It used to be at just greed, now it's back to the extremes, but I'd still be very careful because other indicators are still at key levels. Market momentum is still very greedy. Other things are still quite strong, but you have to remember the puts and call positioning is starting to go up just slightly. With this increase in the way it has been, I just want to note that this could put the market at risk if this keeps going upwards as puts are starting to take control. And on top of this, market volatility, the VIX is actually down to a very, very key level. It's approaching that 13 support. If the VIX continues to drop like this, it's entering a phase where it tends to bounce at. This is very, very low support, so I'll be watching that as well. For tomorrow, in terms of options, for March 22nd, which is tomorrow, we have just under 500,000 calls expiring, and we have over 1 million of the puts expiring, putting max pain at 515 and a 2.18 puts to call ratio. Now, max pain could always change depending on what happens intraday. So I wouldn't solely just trade based off that or expect us to get all the way back down there. But that's going to depend on what the market makers try to do. Do they just, hold the market in one place? Do they cause the market to sell off to get closer to max pain? To determine the answer, we'll have to be watching some key levels. And it's very simple. So SPY has been range bound all day. If we start pushing higher, which is a real possibility, watch and see if we get a rejection between 523 and 524, because this could be resembling a head and shoulders with the left shoulder here, a head up here, and then a right shoulder possibly forming. If that's a head and shoulders that's forming and this thing starts to get a rejection, this could lead to a sell-off. But for this to play out, we have to watch our levels. So for the head and shoulders to play out, we're going to turn bearish. We need to see this thing lose 522, a little pop back to grab liquidity, and a drop right back down. And we need to see a break of structure right here from this key support. That could lead this thing to selling off to 522. If we lose that, we're going to be selling all the way down to 520 to fill our gap, if not 518 all over again. Now, if we're bullish, you want to see this look like a trap, because sometimes head and shoulders are traps. You want to see this thing push up to about 524. If we break this, if we're continuing to get bought up, 525 is coming, followed by 526. What do I think is more probable? Well, there is a risk of this potentially getting a rejection. It's a little bit more probable, but I'm not going to promise anything until we see our tight levels. So watch for supports. Make sure you watch for confirmation. Does SPY lose 522? If we do, we are going to be selling off more. I'd be watching that just to be safe. Onto the QQQ. The QQQ has some tight resistance at 446.8, followed by 448 above that. And the higher we went from 448, 448.5, 449, you guys could see it was just all over the place. Very, very tight resistance the closer it gets to 450. And so far, the QQQ did try to break its all-time high before it came right back down. So it actually hit this resistance and came back down. And we got this rejection, but it's not officially confirmed until we get a follow-through move. So watch to see if we kind of pop towards this imbalance at 447, then eventually come back down. If we lose 446 and hold below that, I see this thing coming down to 444. If we break above 446.5 and start pushing higher above the 447s, watch 448.5. If we break that, we can turn bullish. But I do kind of favor that's going to pop and then start dropping a little bit later. Not a promise. We just have to watch for confirmation if we lose 446 for that support. How about for Tesla? Tesla, in my opinion, is not looking that great because we had some bad news that came out involving politics and things like that, right? There's a possible SEC probe coming out against Tesla, which is not the best of news. If this is a symmetrical structure, see how this thing was like on his little uptrend and we got this pop, this formed like a cup. Or you can even interpret this as kind of like a head and this is like a left shoulder. If this is like a head and shoulders and this is symmetrical, there is a risk of Tesla kind of selling off slowly towards 168 tomorrow if this ends up playing out. If we're bullish, you want to see it break and hold 175. If you're bearish, you want to see it pop and drop and lose 172. If it loses that, there's a risk of this selling all the way down to 168 in my opinion. Tesla was trying to balance, get in very, very nice move. Like I said yesterday, it did push up to almost 180 in the morning, but then it came back down. So it popped, got that explosive move, then came right back down. There's a possible rising wedge break to the downside that could be coming. Not going to solely trade based off that. I just want to note that there is a risk of downside on this chart. So just be very, very careful. For NVIDIA is not looking that great, in my opinion, because the issue is we have a double top leg structure that doesn't guarantee anything, but watch for confirmation. So with this double top, if we lose 908, there's going to be a risk of this coming all the way down to this imbalance at 897, if not 887. And if we turn bullish, you want to see it break past 925. If that breaks, we're going to be looking for a bigger push to 930 than 938. Now, the most likely possibility is that this is forming like an M, and NVIDIA is going to pop and then drop. That is very likely from a technical standpoint, but it's not a guarantee until we see a confirmed break below 908. And if we continue to hold below that and technicals remain bearish, it could sink lower. But just to be safe, not going to guarantee it until we get confirmation. I need to see this thing break first to tell you it's going to happen. Apple's not looking that great because the daily looks kind of weak, and we had this big rejection after the DOJ news. I think it's going to rebound a little bit, but the problem is we got a very, very weak close, and Apple could remain very weak after this bad news came out. So if we lose, so basically it may pop and then drop. If we lose 170, we're going to be sinking all the way down to 168. To turn bullish, you want to see it try to break above these resistance levels. We're going to have some very tight levels on Apple. This previous resistance this previous support becoming resistance is now going to be 173.75. If we break 172.5, watch 173.25, then 174. Could pop and then drop or just drop from here. I do see a little bit more of a risk of downside, but I think it's going to rebound first. So watch to see where Apple rejects off of. Do we reject off 173.25 or 174? And if we do get that rejection, where does it start sinking to? Do we kind of like pop first and then reject, or do we just pop a little bit and then reject? Watch for something like that on Apple. With that being said, guys, I'm going to transition to the other parts of this video. I'm going to pull up bigger time frames and now just talk about how other tickers are looking. My order is a little bit out of the way because I just kind of like came up with these from the back of my head. I was supposed to use Weeble like I usually do because that's like easier to kind of see. But the reason I couldn't is because of the fact that it just had a glitch. It wasn't really working for me. So this is what my charts are going to look like from here. I just want to note that right here we have Palantir. Palantir is in a very, very interesting place. Let me just fix up a couple of things for 1 second. As far as Palantir goes, I want to mention that the chart is looking a little bit weaker right now. We're going to be looking at this support at 24.5. That's where we have our 50 EMA. And also 24.4 is where our 20 EMA happens to be. So if we're bullish, you want to see this thing break past 25.5 and start pushing higher. If you're bearish, you want to see this thing lose support and start sinking all the way down to 24 and even below that. In my opinion, looking at the way this popped and kind of came back down to the EMA, the most likely possibility is we kind of pop from here. Could this be an inverse head and shoulders? I think that's another possibility. If we bounce off here, could kind of resemble like an inverse head and shoulders, and we could see this thing push back up. But if we fail to break this high, if we establish a lower high and start rejecting again, there is a risk of this actually coming back down lower, and this could just be a trap. So if this pops to about like 25 or so and rejects, and it comes back down to 24.4, and we fail to hold that support with the market possibly rejecting, this would turn bearish. We're going to be looking for a move back down to 23.5. If we're bullish, you want to see it hold 24.4. If we hold above this, we could rebound to 26 for an inverse head and shoulders. It all depends on 24.4 to 24.5. Do we bounce off that level and start pushing higher to break this high, or do we kind of like pop and then drop? I'll be watching for that very, very carefully. The chart is showing a little weakness though, so just be kind of careful. For super micro, I just want to note that we're approaching resistance right over here at 975. If we lose 975, I'm going to be looking for a push all the way up to about 1,000. It is looking like it could attempt to push a little higher. It actually did a little bit better than other stocks out there. But let me just note that as time progresses, we're approaching some other key levels. So I'm going to be focusing more on kind of like EMAs and less on trend lines. I'm going to be looking for a test of 975. If we break past this, we could get up to about 1,000. But then we have some tight resistance there because that's where the previous support becoming resistance is going to be. So I think it might go a little higher, but then watch that 1,000 resistance. If we reject off of that, we're going to be coming back down lower because the overall trend could still be bearish despite that happening, right? We still have this little downtrend being respected right here on super micro. Could pop and drop or kind of like drop from here. I think it's going to push a little higher, though. It does look like it may try to make its way up to at least 1,000. So it's showing some life and more strength compared to the market. For Rivian, Rivian is not looking that great. It's kind of struggling to really get a break above our key EMAs. So right here, you guys can see it kind of rejected off this 11.3 area. Now we're just basing around 11 flat. It might just trade sideways between 11.3 and 11 for the time being, but I do see it kind of declining towards 11 again, then trading sideways. It's not really much with this chart. For SoFi, in my opinion, is trading sideways, not really doing a whole lot. Going to pop thanks to Jerome Powell. But the issue with the stock is the fact that it's kind of consolidating again, not really doing a whole lot. So watch resistance right now at 7.5. We have support, critical support at 7.25. It might kind of pop a little bit, then contract and just trade sideways for the time being. I'm seeing a lot of sideways price action, not really much going on with it. And there is a risk of it coming back down to 7.25. So it may trade sideways and come down to 7.25, and we'll see how it goes. For AMD is not looking that great. It's been on a bit of a downtrend, but the good news is that we have support around 176.9. So we're trying to hold support right here. This could be forming an inverse head and shoulders. Not too confident about that. This looks like a left shoulder, ahead maybe a right shoulder. If we bounce off this support right here around 177, I'm going to be looking for a push back up to 186. Okay. If we lose 176, we're going to be sinking all the way back down to 174, and then we're going to be looking a lot more bearish. As of right now, it's trying to hold this support where this red EMA happens to be. So if we hold it, we're going to try to bounce. If we fail, we're going to sink. As of right now, it's holding up pretty well. There is a chance it may attempt to bounce, not from the market, but just to be safe, let's watch and see if we can get that bounce and we hold this support. I'll be watching this very, very carefully to see if AMD could try to do it. That's going to be determined by other stocks out there and the market. How is Amazon looking? Amazon not looking that great to me because you could see it grab liquidity up here all the way up to about 181.5, then came right back down. I just want to note that on the overall structure of it, we have this tight resistance. We like to reject near 180. So if we hold above 178, we could try to consolidate between 178 and 180, kind of trade sideways. If we lose 178, I see it coming all the way back down to 176.96 and eventually 175. On the chart, it's showing a little weakness after this liquidity grab, so there is a risk of it kind of like popping and then dropping. And I do see a risk of it returning to 176. But just to be safe, let's watch for confirmation. We have to lose 178 first for that to be determined. For Meta, Meta kind of rejects off this 515 resistance coming back down. We're watching support at the 5 EMA at 507, 507.5. If we lose 507.5, I could see this coming back down to 500. If we hold it and try to bounce off this, we could be looking for a retest of 515. Now, Meta is starting to consolidate a little bit. It's kind of trading sideways, so watch and see. Do we lose 507.5 or do we break past 510? If it breaks 510, we're going to be looking for 515. If we lose 507.5, we turn bearish. As of right now, it's kind of indecisive, but this is starting to turn a bit. There is a risk, but we need a follow-through move for confirmation. For Microsoft, this is looking bullish so far. It's on a very, very nice uptrend, but we're going to be watching resistance around 430. If we break this, we could go up to about 432, but I'll be watching to see if we end up getting some kind of rejection or not, as we have a gap to fill below. If we lose 428.4 on Microsoft, I see this thing coming back down to 425. If we hold that support, it could try to push higher. As right now, it's holding up very well, kind of outperforming the market. So I'm going to be very patient with this and give this the time it needs. I think it needs more time to determine which way it's going, but it does look a bit more bullish. It could try to push a little bit higher, if anything. The VIX is on a bit of a downtrend, but here's the thing about the VIX. I believe we filled this gap. We were looking for this gap to get filled. I think we filled it. So we filled this gap that's way down here in this 13 area. We also touched 12.4. Notice how we have this very, very tiny yellow trend line. Every time we touch it, we do tend to bounce. And the VIX is at levels where it tends to bounce. So I'm going to be watching to see if we can try to base at 13. If we break past 13.02, the 5 EMA, it's going to go up to 13.65. If that happens, it's going to be because of the market getting a rejection. We're in a territory that's kind of risky on the VIX, but that doesn't guarantee anything until we get a confirmation move back up. Haven't seen that yet, so I'm going to be very patient. For the dollar is showing a little bit of life trying to pump, but we're going to be watching this resistance way up here at this 104 area. I think I want to pull up the daily on the dollar just to check one more thing. The daily is showing a little bit of strength. If this thing continues to push higher, we have to be watching this resistance at 104.2. If we break that, we're going to be looking for a push to about 104.35. If the dollar continues to push higher, this would be a bearish signal for the markets, at least technically speaking. As of right now, it's showing a little bit of strength. That does suggest the market could weaken, but we need confirmation first. And finally, we have ARM. This is kind of like spontaneous. I should probably move these around a little bit. But moving forward, I just want to mention that ARM, it's looking a little bit weak right now. It's been a bit of a downtrend, a little downtrend right over here. If we lose this support right over here at 134, we could be looking for a move down to fill this gap at about 131.5. So I do see that being a big risk of this coming back down closer to 130, especially because we're kind of turning on the 4-hour. If we watch 130 as key support. If we lose that, we're going to sink lower. If we hold it, we'll see how it goes. But with that being said, guys, thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully this video was insightful. I know I'm not going over like every single thing I typically go over. I mean, I did go over most of the most pivotal ones like Supermicro, ARM, SoFi, Microsoft, and etc. So I hope you guys found value in this video. I am sorry about Webull not working. Things like that happen. I do really enjoy using Webull just to talk very quickly about other charts. But for now, we're just going to focus on this. And we'll see how things go. So please have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you, and peace out.